good afternoon. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on the Zambezi Uniting Forest, Water and Climate. My name is Sara Casadas. I'm a forestry officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and I will be your moderator for today's session. So first, some housekeeping notes. Please remember that the audio will be muted for everyone by default. The chat function is available, so please introduce yourselves in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from, what organization you're coming from. And for questions, please remember to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will try to answer them as they come in, and for any remaining questions, we will share our emails at the end. So without further ado, let me pass the floor to Ms. Serena Fortuna, Senior Forestry Officer here at FAO, to open the webinar. Serena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sara. Hope you can hear me well. Should, right? Super. Okay. Let me then really give a very warm welcome to all the panelists and all the participants on this very important webinar on behalf of FAO, but also on behalf of UN-RED. It's really a great pleasure for us to share the results of the headwater forests of the Zambezi for water and climate action. In the next hour, we'll learn from, but also get inspired by results of a very strong collaborative efforts undertaken since 2023 between FAO, the Polytechnic University of Valencia, and the University of Zambia within the framework of UN-RED, technical assistance to the country, including through specific financial support of the UK. So we would like also, therefore, to start with a big thank you to all the parties who have been engaged in this very important efforts. The Zambezi River is one of Africa's largest rivers and acts as a lifeline for 8 countries. The headwaters of this mighty river are partially in Zambia's northwestern province, which is also the province with the highest forest cover in the country. Most of you know already that our planet is really facing multiple crises linked to deforestation, biodiversity loss, climate change, but all of these are really connected to and impacting food and water security. Therefore, concrete actions across sectors and land use are essential, so to halt and where possible to reverse deforestation, maintaining these critical natural resources. Zambia has more than 60% of total land area covered by forest, at least to the last forest resource assessment from FAO. We are eagerly waiting for the next one to come up soon towards the second part of this year. But all of these forests are providing the majority of the Zambian population with various products for their livelihoods, social, economic, and cultural development. Forest stores a large amount of carbon, regulates local climates. In Zambian context, and especially when we look at the northwestern province, those forests are also vital for regulating water quality, quantity, and the timing, as well as rainfall at local and regional levels. All this interconnection, that's what we refer to when we speak about forest, water, climate nexus. So really ensuring healthy forests for climate, water, and other benefits is crucial, not only for the local communities that depend on them for their livelihoods, but also for people and industries that are downstream. In all of the above points that we mentioned so far, the Zambezi emerged really as silent and powerful allies, halting deforestation and promoting sustainable forest management in the headwaters are essential tools for continued provisions of ecosystem services, ensuring water, food security, and climate actions towards mitigation and adaptation, while bolstering the resilience of local communities. That's very pivotal and critical, our attention and critical support to the people that are really depending on forest. And for that, also reliable, solid, and updated data and information is critical when we speak about informed decision-making. That's why local, district, and national economic and environmental objectives are achievable if we gain a better understanding of the linkages between forest, water, and climate. In this case, also the assessment was indeed looking at these very important interrelations. And looking at how forest cover and water availability and regulations, how these are interconnected, how opportunities emerge for local communities, for the economies, for climate change mitigation adaptation. What you're going to hear today from this assessment are really contributing to the development, we hope, are contributing to the development of a model to support forest water climate action at local and jurisdictional level, and to Zambia overall climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. Through the happiness that we have to share the results of this assessment with you today, we really hope that you'll find in Zambia a support to the journey towards improved management of forest and water resources, really creating a sustainable future along one of Africa's most iconic rivers. But we really hope also that this discussion, these results can inspire and boost ideas and opportunities for upscaling and replicating joint action across sectors and across actors in those sectors, with the final objectives of contributing to reducing the deforestation, reviving sustainable use for the benefit of people, their food and water security, climate and biodiversity. So with no further ado, I'm really eager to hear what the results are going to be brought to the discussions today, the results of the different workshops on the ground, and what the actors really think about this important work that has been undertaken. So I wish us all a very engaging webinar, and over to you back, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Serena. And so, yes, thank you for setting the scene and for highlighting the importance of the headwaters of the Zambezi for food, for water security, for climate action. So as you were mentioning, this is part of the UN RED technical assistance to Zambia, and this is also part of a larger area of work. So I will now pass the floor to my colleague, Brian Ross, who is also at the FAO office in Zambia, to give us an overview of this work. Brian, over to you.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Sarah and Serena. Much appreciated for that introduction. So yeah, as Sarah said, I'm Brian Ross. I'm the technical advisor based in Lusaka's FAO office, working on the UN RED program and assisting the Aim for Forests program as well. So just very briefly, this slide shows you the higher level context of everything that we've been working on for the past couple of years in partnership with the Forestry Department and other stakeholders in Zambia. So broadly, we've been looking to design this model for local climate action, supporting various elements of local actors and local stakeholders, both at the local level, at the subnational level, and at the national level to collaborate around this model. And so essentially, if you look at the circle there, you'll see basically each of the different work streams that we've been engaged with. And I'll just give you a very brief overview of each of those. We've done an assessment of the rural finance landscape in Northwestern Province, particularly in 5 districts at the very northwestern corner of Northwestern Province. We've been also doing some assessments on forest value chains, looking at how we can potentially support increased commercialization as a livelihood opportunities for forest communities in the area. We're taking an assessment of kind of carbon projects in Zambia this year, and how the benefits have impacted local communities and how they've been involved, and what lessons we can extract from that moving forward. We've looked at some forest data. So we undertook a forest inventory survey in one of the specific districts that we're focused on, Manyinga district, just to get a better sense of forest resources, natural resources, the particular trees, the particular biodiversity in that helps to undergird some of the models that we've been working on. And then finally, we've been working on a forest management, or we've initiated development of a process of a forest management plan for Manyinga district. And so all of these have kind of come together as different elements of this local climate action, and they will be focused on contributing to the forest climate business case, which is trying to bring together each of these individual elements to create a strong economic and livelihoods-focused business case for how communities can be incentivized and benefit more economically from the forest resources, and in turn support better forest management. So those are the keys that we've been working on. The last one, as you noticed, was forest, water, climate, which is exactly what we're speaking about today. So you'll certainly get a lot more in-depth information on that piece of this pie. So thank you again. It's good to have you here, and we look forward to continued good discussion. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Brian. And now for the next part of the presentation, I would like to share the presentation as well. We're going to present it together with Dr. Kawawa Banda from the University of Zambia, the Integrated Water Resources Center, and with Dr. Maria Gonzalez Sanchez from the Polytechnic University of Valencia, UPV. So let's now hear about the results and the assessment in general. So next slide, please. So first, let's start with a little bit of the science. So forests provide a number of ecosystem services in terms of water quality, quantity, and timing. In terms of water quality, for example, forests through their root systems, they hold the soil, they protect against soil erosion and improve water quality, not just for humans, but also for biodiversity. For example, fish, and they maintain the water quality of streams. They also are a cost-efficient solution for reducing sedimentation for the hydropower sector. Forests also regulate water quantity, for example, through infiltration and percolation. They protect against floods and runoff and increase groundwater recharge. Water is then slowly released into the water bodies throughout the year. So this is very important for climate change adaptation. For example, with the huge droughts that we're seeing in the recent years. Forests also stabilize local climate, reducing extreme temperatures and regulating rainfall. At large scale, this regulation processes or climate regulation processes translate into cooling benefits that also translate in extra mitigation. So in addition to carbon, we have cooling benefits at global levels. So climate change adaptation and mitigation. So let's stay with the large scale level. So next slide, please. Where over 50% of the rain falling over land originates from ecosystems such as forests. This rain falls locally, but it can also fall hundreds of kilometers away. So for example, if we have deforestation in an area, it may impact that rainfall that falls in that area, but also the rainfall hundreds of kilometers away. So these relationships between forest and water are very contextual. They depend on where forests are in the watershed, the seasonality, the forest type, the age, the tree species, the density. This is very important in myombo woodlands. Time and spatial scales. We were just talking about local to continental scale. So from local to global scales, forests and water and climate are interconnected. However, when we talk about water, we often discuss about water resources in terms of water in rivers, lakes, aquifers. This is blue water. But we don't necessarily take into account the water stored in soils, plants, trees, which is called rainwater. So we need to understand this interconnectedness, understanding that changes in forest cover can impact the services, and we can generate trade-offs and synergies. So trade-off is if I prioritize one ecosystem service from the forest, it may result in a negative impact in another service, and synergies if I have a management solution that perhaps optimizes a number of ecosystem services. So everything is very contextual, and with this in mind, let's move on to the assessment. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the assessment, let me see because I'm not sure we're seeing. Okay, so in terms of the assessment, the purpose was to carry out an assessment, look at the relationships between forest, water, and climate. We wanted to partner with relevant institutions, and why? Well, 3 reasons. Generate knowledge to support sustainable forest management, increase knowledge and capacity of local partners, and increase and inform resource mobilization efforts. Next slide, please. So where and why? Why did we look at this area? Well, as Serena was mentioning, we looked at the headwater districts, 5 priority districts. And if we look at them, we overlay the watersheds that cover those districts. It's mostly covered by the Kabompo River Basin. But then Ikelenge is actually covered by a sub-basin that drains into Angola. So why this area? This area is very important in terms of forest cover. In fact, 70% of Northwestern Province is covered by forests. Also, in terms of Forest Landscape Integrity Index, this is integrity. This is medium to high. But of course, there's a degradation due to expansion of agriculture, mining, charcoal production, wildfires, and climate change. This area is also very important for ecosystem services provision. So all the ecosystem services are concentrated in this area in terms of water, in terms of carbon sequestration, hazard mitigation, nature-based tourism, timber, wildlife, and others. But of course, as I mentioned, climate change is really impacting these forests and changing rainfall quantity, the patterns. There is also a reduction in average annual stream flow and an increase in water stress. So next slide, please. Excellent. So we wanted to look at the relationships between forest, water, and climate. Of course, we went to the literature and we tried to find information, but we really couldn't find ground information or even literature. So we decided to do a two-tiered approach. Tier 1, next slide, please. Okay, and the next one. Thank you. So the methodology for Tier 1, we first characterize the headwater districts and the basins through remote sensing and data and tools with locally available literature. We then use the CAFE model, which was produced by UPV, to do a theoretical exercise and analyze carbon and water services. Then we validated the methodology through a workshop in 2023. Next slide, please. So what did we find? On the screen, you see two maps. We first found that the area is dominated by Mayombo woodlands and grasslands, that there is a significant forest cover of about 33,000 square kilometers, but that there has been some changes in the forest cover. The map above shows that. And then on the right, you see the graph. So what we did was break this big area that we were looking at. We broke it up into sub-basins and tried to look at changes in forest cover by sub-basin. You can see that throughout the years, this changes. It also changes by basin. And of course, there are some hotspots for forest loss, mostly in urban centers and riparian areas. There is also a high potential for restoration, and that's the map that you see on the lower left. There are about 29, almost 30,000 square kilometers of areas that could be restored. So then we use the CAFE model. So that's the next slide. Yes, thank you. We use the CAFE model by UPV to model the forest from 1919 to 2020 and compare baseline and management scenarios. We saw that there are some sub-basins where they have higher increasing water provisioning with management, or other basins that would actually have higher increase in carbon sequestration. So the results of that were graphs like the ones you see on your right, where basically we're showing, okay, unmanaged forests versus management can result in different amounts of whether that's water or carbon. So again, let's looking at those trade-offs and synergies. Then we did, one of the key things in this model was that there was a lack of localized data. We wanted to do this with climate models, but we couldn't find localized climate models. And then for some of the sub-basins that were so big that it was difficult for the model to handle that amount of data. So after this, we also did a workshop. So next slide, please. Perfect. So we did the workshop, and in the workshop, we had some important highlights. First, the high need for improved decision making and decision support tools. We also As we learned in the Tier 1 assessment, the Northwestern Province is really a hotspot for economic activities and ecosystem services. There is also a need to balance provision and community needs. We also had some insights into how we can improve forest management practices and the need to involve multiple sectors. A lot of the people that came to the workshop were from Lusaka. And so we had differing views on the role of communities in forest management. However, there was a wide recognition of the services that the forests provide, and also that there is a low technical capacity. So next slide, please. So we said, okay, what do we do next? We said, well, okay, together, we looked at maybe we could do a pilot or look at a small area where we would have more data and address those limitations, right? So have more data and better models. So we did a prioritization exercise, something that had economic activities, that had community forest management groups, that was perhaps representative of a larger area and important for all these ecosystem services that we had been discussing. So we came up with 2 areas, Ikelenge, and then the other arrow that you see on the right. And this is actually the site that we chose, and we went on to Tier 2. So next slide, please. And the next slide. So Tier 2, the area that we chose was in Munilinga. It's, you see the larger yellow area in the map in the middle. That was our initial area. So our pilot area was the smaller blue area. It's about 153 square kilometers, drains directly into the Kawompo River, combines agricultural and forest land uses, is dominated by Mayombo woodlands, and we started with that picture on the right. Dr. Kawawa is going to speak about what the dots and the zones mean. So next slide, please. What was the methodology? So first we selected the pilot area based on the workshop. Then we collected field data, and this was done by UNZA. Then we use models to develop the scenarios, scenarios. And then we use global remote sensing products for further analysis. We also collected socioeconomic data to contextualize the field data in the model. And then we shared the results and recommendations through a multi-stakeholder result sharing workshop in November last year. So next slide, please. Yes. So for the next slide, I would like to pass the floor to Dr. Kawawa Banda. Kawawa, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah, for laying the foundation. I'll go straight into the methodology that was used at field scale. As a point of departure, first of all, we needed to assess the type of species that were available in the study site. And to do this, we did delineate at 30 by 30. This is a plot size, where within those 30 by 30 meter plot sizes, we then characterized, what type of species you had in there. So you can see from the species identification, we normally, or at least we try to depend on the local, knowledge that was available. We were very impressed with, the knowledge that existed within the local people in terms of what they knew on these forests, possibly indicating a large dependency on forest products. But you can see from that, we also were working with a team from the Department of Forestry Services within the province. Now, we needed a way also to upscale the work that we're doing. So upon, identification of species within these plots, we then also mapped it with, drone images. And we conducted within the areas of interest, at least 15 flights were flown, producing over 900 images of drone data. Of course, the processing was done using a free open access tool called Open Drone Maps. We just requested for additional space because of the size of the images that were involved. Next slide. Additionally, from the forest, we also looked at the soil and water aspects. I'll start with the soil characterization. In there, within at the middle of this 30 by 30 plot, we did actually dig through a profile, almost going up to 1 meter in depth. And in that pit, we then looked at the soil profile. This is mainly texture and as well as the grain sizes for detailed descriptions in there. Soil texture, this was obviously taken to a lab and using a hydrometer method to then estimate or at least say something about the texture size. We also were very observant on the color, and we also used this Munsell as reference to detail the color type that we observed there. For the soil organic matter, we used the method called the Walkley and Black method. This was done at lab level. For the water quality, we did both your physical assessments in the field as well as lab scale types of assessments. This was mainly targeted at cations and anions, with a special interest, of course, on the nutrients aspect of things, but as well as also appreciating what these physiochemical variables look like. Next slide. A very important part of this was to conduct a socioeconomic survey within the communities where this forest cover existed, and we were targeting community forest management groups. And in there, we're sort of trying to extract the benefits, or at least how the community saw the role of the forest, appreciating things like the forest health, the water, and of course the products that came out that they would derive economic or subsistence activities out of them. Most of the questions were yes and no type of answers, but where necessary, we then allowed them to have these open-ended questions for descriptions of what they meant or what they wanted to express through that. Allow me to also to mention a bit of limitations in the way that the socioeconomic survey was collected. Some of of course, we were very targeted in the way that the survey was being done, and I must say that as much as possible, we wanted to target those communities within these CFMGs, but you would find one or two maybe who might have been outside this, but they were direct beneficiaries to some extent of these community forest management groupings. The yes and no answers also sometimes maybe they were a bit constrained, but we're also looking at the amount of time we had to collect the data. We also used local people who lived in this community because of the language. So some of the things you would bear with us that are a bit difficult to translate into the local language. Some English words are difficult to translate. So ambiguity in that particular sense in interpretation, but we did as much as possible try to explain to the people being interviewed. Next slide. Okay, in terms of the results that came out of this work, let me start again with the forest species. There were about 31 tree species that we were able to identify within these particular plots. And amongst them, the most dominant, I'll stick to the local names. So there was the Mutombo, the Musamba, and Mwense. You can read for yourself the more scientific names there. With a total tree canopy cover going up to 84%. So it's relatively quite thick areas in that particular sense. We also, during the process of collecting this data, did collect forest-specific information in terms of, the tree heights, the trunk diameters as well. Next slide. The drone survey helped us to upscale what we did at these selected, points of focus. And we noticed that within the riparian zones, they were pretty much, not disturbed we could see that, within the, at least where the main stem of the river system was, the riparian zones were playing a big part of buffering. However, we did see evidence of some human impacts on this particular system with existing farming and some burning, probably attached to maybe charcoal, although I must mention that the traditional leadership in this area do place a very high premium if you are caught practicing, deforestation activities, which are linked to charcoal burning and that sort of thing. Next slide. And then I will hand over back to Sarah.
Thank you, Kawawa. And so as I showed you in Tier 1, we tried to use these global products to calculate, for example, tree loss from 2001 to 2023. As you can see, it's a similar trend, forest loss in, for example, riparian areas. We also try to do the restoration or use the restoration potential product, but as you can see from the image on the right, it wasn't very useful. And this is also highlighting the need for local data and data collection. So let me just go to the next slide and pass it over to Dr. Maria Gonzalez to tell us more about the models, the methodology, and the results from that. Maria, over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you. Well, we use two different approaches in Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1, we use, as Sarah already said, we use CAFE model, which is a decision support system that it's built out of distributed eco-hydrological model. What does it need to work? We need information about vegetation in terms of forest cover and biomass and species distribution, but not as detailed as tree forest inventory will be. Of course, information about the soil, texture, and depth, and daily meteorological data, which was also a big issue here because, as you saw, Tier 1, the study area was really big, so we had to rely on satellite data. Why did we use this approach here? Because this kind of model, it's more suitable when you are dealing with large study sites where you don't need a very detailed tree information. What's not the dark side, but what's not the so bright side of this approach is it is quite difficult to bring the results into practice. It's quite difficult to obtain detailed forest management schemes that could be applied. It's more an exercise to frame the problem, to know the range you could be within in order to manage your forest, to achieve different goals, but not to design the forest management scheme per se. So we did that on Tier 2, where we narrowed down the study side. We went straight away to Winilinga. Sorry, it's hard for me to say it. And we use here a different approach. It's another model. It's method. Let me say both models are free to use. They are open source and everyone can use it. It's also a semi-distributed eco-hydrological model, but here the difference is I'm going to work on a smaller area and I'm going to need a tree forest inventory. Actually, the data Dr. Kawawa Banda just told us about. And this tool, we said I quote here, it speaks forestry because it is easier to simulate real management schemes and therefore to generate real management scheme. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here is what we did. We set different management schemes we started from business as usual, which is the current charcoal production. What is it? What is it about? So I'm saying the model, okay, when you find a forest plot with wood, please cut almost everything out because I want to produce as much carbon as possible, as much charcoal as possible, sorry. Then we build another scenario, which is strict conservation, which is, okay, when you find a forest, just let it grow. Don't touch it. Just let it grow and let it nature be, and then we will see what's going on there in terms of ecosystem services. And then we imagine different management schemes that for us will be more suitable to this area. We simulate management as we call from above and from below, as you can see in the slide. So what is it? What it is from above and from below? When you're managing from above, it means you will go most of the times for the bigger trees. So imagine a forest where you have dominated trees, the trees that underneath the big trees. So when you are managing from above, it means you will go mainly to chop down the bigger trees. And when you do management from below, it's the other way around. You will go mainly for the smaller trees. It's not black or white. I mean, when you do management from above, sometimes you also remove part of the big trees and so on. But that's basically it's more or less the philosophy. And here, when I say I'm going to remove part of the big trees, but what part? I mean, it's 30%, 50%, 10%. So that's what we call here less intense and more intense. We do a very mild management scheme, which is called there less intense, which will be removing 20%, and then a bit more intense, which will be removing 30%. And finally, we imagine a scenario, also a management scenario, but in this case, we're going to do reforestation. We're going to plant trees at different tree densities. And we're going to see how will it behave when these trees will grow old. I mean, not at the very beginning of the restoration, but when this restoration will be mature. And we simulate this with the current climatic scenario and also with 8.5 climate change. Next slide, please. And here is what we obtain. When we use this model, we are reproducing the forest dynamics together with the water dynamics and the carbon dynamics. So we know how much water comes into the forest, which is the rain. We know that because it's the input meteorological data. But what matters to us is how much water will come out of this forest and how much of this water will be expended in the forest growth. And of course, we also know how much the trees are growing and therefore how much carbon are they sequestrating. So as you can see, we have the charcoal. If we go for the water, we can see that the business as usual produce a lot of what we call blue water. What's blue water? When it rains, part of the water will be captured or will be trapped in the tree crowns, and most of the water will reach the soil. On the water that reaches the soil, part of this water will be drunk by the trees, and part of the water that is not drunk not used by trees could be used to feed aquifers from water or rivers, and sooner or later rivers. So that's what we call blue water, is the part of the water that is not consumed by the ecosystem, but could be consumed by us if we are close enough. So as we can see, business as usual produces quite an amount of water. Why? Because I'm chopping down a lot of trees. But if we compare the scenario where we do nothing, we find a forest and we don't touch a thing, and we compare this scenario with forest management, with this from above or from below, we will see that when we're doing this sustainable forest management, we are increasing this blue water. But well, this blue water could be in a way of deep percolation, which is soil infiltration, and little by little it will end up in the aquifer, or could be straight away runoff. We don't want a lot of runoff. Why don't we want a lot of runoff? Because we don't want soil erosion. We don't want to increase soil erosion. So as you can see, the business as usual, the charcoal scenario is creating, is the one that is creating the highest amount of runoff. So the highest soil erosion among them all. And going from, maybe here in the scale we cannot see the difference. We will need a smaller scale. But let me tell you, because all the team, we have been analyzed that management, the management from above or from below, it also makes a difference in terms of water, in terms of carbon. And it's usually better in this kind of scenarios to be focused a little bit more on the management from below. It doesn't mean you cannot take sometimes big trees, but it will be your main focus. And in terms of carbon sequestration, as you can see, of course, this charcoal scenario is the one that produces less, that sequestrate less carbon. And as you can see, management scenario increases carbon sequestration because you are making the trees that stay there, they are growing healthier, and they are growing bigger, and they are growing faster. So next slide, please. And in terms of wood production, because of course we want to obtain something from the forest. I mean, people has to make a living out of it. Of course, if you go for the charcoal scenario, for the business as usual, you will obtain more tons of wood because you're removing it all. But you will obtain this wood, and then you will have to wait a very long time to renew this this benefit. And next slide, please. The last one. Yeah, and in terms of climate change, okay, you can see if we are going for a plantation scenario, for a forest restoration scenario, we should be very careful. And we should be very careful as well with the tree density, because we are probably going to decrease a big deal the blue water. What does it mean? People who live downwaters from this forest will could have water scarcity problems. And yeah, thank you.
Maria, maybe to add to this one, that this is with the climate change scenario, you ran the model, and really one of the key things that really struck me was that climate change wouldn't allow the forest to grow. And this was the only scenario that we were able to find for localized climate, right? So yeah, this was one of the key issues. We looked for climate scenarios, and this was the only one that, thanks to Dr. Kawawa, we were able to find.
Yeah, it was really tricky to find it.
Yes. But next slide. Maybe we turn it over to Kawawa now for the results of the socioeconomic survey. And colleagues, let's try to keep it short because we are running into the next section of the webinar. So over to you, Kawawa.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Yeah, so just to mention that from the survey, almost 338 of the participants, or at least the respondents, were part of a CFMG, which I think was good to know. And this area was traversed by about 7 CFMGs. And of course, there are certain areas which were more represented than others. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so what did we learn from the survey? Number one, that the health of the river is perceived to be deteriorating. This is information from the community, and they feel that the biggest driver of this deterioration is from climate change, but also there are practices like, for example, livestock rearing and the use of fertilizer was a big issue. The previous presenter did show these scenarios in terms of impacts from climate, change. One of the issues which they also mentioned was that, climate change is something that they see as being rarely mentioned, but is important in terms of water health in these communities. The respondents also believe that these long-term benefits of forest management practices are important for water resources in this particular context. We also see that there's a very high dependency on groundwater in this community. I mean, this is typical in a rural setting that groundwater is typically used. And then most of the respondents were very dependent on fishing activities as their main source of livelihoods, but were making use of the river for, of course, most of their livelihoods and, of course, food security in that sense. Next slide. What we see as, of course, limitations, maybe another processes. Sarah, do you want to come in on the slide?
Yes, sure. So maybe very quickly, again, we mentioned the climate model limitations that we couldn't find. We also collected the endocrinology samples to validate the tier 2 model. Also, despite choosing the tier 2 pilot area, this was a particular area with all the CFMDs. Again, also with the socioeconomic part linked to a unique site. So something that was highlighted was that this could be linked to other processes such as national forest inventories, watershed management, and climate processes. So next slide, please. So we also did the training and the result sharing workshops. We had participants from government agencies, forest, water, meteorology. SESCO was there, the CFMDs, the universities, local and international civil society organizations. It was very intergenerational. And in the training, we worked on Google Earth Engine, the loading Area 5 data, worked on R, and then using the Med-Fate model that Maria mentioned. They also did simulations trying to each prioritize one ecosystem service over another and then see this trade-offs and synergies. Next slide, please. So some takeaways, yes, DSS tools are very important. Again, Northwestern Province is very important for ecosystem services and economic activities. But we also saw that there were opportunities for livelihoods and innovative incentives. So the result sharing workshop, we worked in groups and they kept mentioning, okay, we need to look at PS, at carbon projects and non-wood forest product enterprises. So this allows people to better understand those initiatives. So we also discussed sustainable forest management. We want to achieve that, but the reality right now is not sustainable. So how do we go towards that? For the communities here, it changed quite a lot from tier 1. The role of the communities is now seen as vital in sustainable forest management and beyond. They don't manage just the forest, they also manage the water. And so what does this look like? Does that look like, agroforestry systems with woodlots? They can gain an income from sustainable management practices that can produce some wood, for example. There were, again, some major capacity development gaps. And then there was this recognition that having these tools, numbers, data improves the participatory processes because it brings all the sectors together and you can visualize those trade-offs and synergies. You can visualize that if you prioritize something, it will have this impact on these other services. So we need to all be sitting at the same table to be able to manage our resources properly. And then the need for tailored information and support in local languages. So now let's move on to the next slide. And let me now invite, Dr. Kawawa will stay with us, Cassandra, let me invite Cassandra Lundu from the FAO Zambia office, Stephen Muyali, who is from the West Lunga Conservation Project, and he was also part of the data collection. And then Muyunda Muleka, who is from the forestry department. So while I invite everyone to the panel, my colleague Diction, who is supporting us with IT today, will make sure that we're all on the same screen. So let me start with the first question. What was the most valuable part of this workshops or the assessment? Or you, what did you like the most? And maybe let me start with Stephen. Stephen?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Sorry.
What did you like the most about this this workshop, the trainings and or the data collection process that you participated in?
Okay, what I liked the most about the training was the enrichment we got in terms of with regard to knowledge. The training emphasized the crucial role of the headwater forest in the Zambezi River Basin for water regulation, climate mitigation, as well as biodiversity conservation. So what I really liked was that I was able to gain insights that forest water climate nexus is a complex relationship, yet is very crucial for ecosystem resilience as well as human well-being.
Thank you, Stephen. Muyunda, maybe let me ask you the same question. What was the best part of this process for you? What did you enjoy the most? Muyunda, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. From my end, I was able to think just the relationship between the water, forest, and the also. Are you getting me?
Muyunda, could you turn off perhaps your camera because the signal is a little bit bad. So maybe turn off your camera so we can hear you. And then okay, try again.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, much better.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, much better.
Thank you very much. Yes. What captured me most during the training is the relationship actually that exists between the forest and also water and all this complex relationship, and the information that came out that when we do certain management practices, then we're able to manipulate sort of what we want to achieve. We need to manipulate certain things to ensure that we achieve our goal. For example, when we don't, most of the times we have been just sometimes going for complete protection and say we are doing this, but we realized also during the workshop that when we do that, certain things are not achieved. So I was able to appreciate the training in the sense that it brought in a lot of information that we needed to really be on the ground and be able to prescribe certain prescriptions for us to achieve what we wanted to achieve at the end of the day.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me pass it over to Dr. Kawawa. What was your takeaway from this workshops and this trainings?
Yeah, the trainings and workshops for me exposed the interest from the communities and the people who actually live in these areas, that were very interested to learn about what's happening in the forests and drawing linkages to other benefits that come out from this particular work. And obviously the tool itself, the management tool, like the cafe tool and Medveta, that was demonstrated by UPV, showed that we need to maybe invest a little bit more in data collection of our forest type or forest covers to provide some scenarios to ensure that whatever forest management approach you want to take, it's informed by some kind of modeling or information to then upscale into some policy position in that sense.
Thank you, Kawawa. And Cassandra, let me pass it over to you because you've been part of this assessment, but also part of the wider work that FAO has been doing in Zambia through the UN RED technical assistance. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so my main takeaway from the training is the critical role that the forests play in regulating water flow and supporting climate resilience, especially in areas where there is a good forest cover, like Northwestern Province, because we already heard that forest cover is about 70% in that province. So the other important takeaway was the importance of adopting a landscape level approach to forest management, mostly which considers the interconnections between the forests, water flows, and climate regulation. So the use of the cafe tool as well in decision making was another critical point. And this is particularly important in integrating adaptive forest management planning. The training also emphasized the need to integrate scientific data with community level forest governance structures, especially in the community forest management groups, where it was a challenge to have access to natural resource information, specifically the resources that are available in the community. Yeah, that was my main takeaway. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. And let me now ask about changing your views. Did the assessment, did the results change your views in terms of forest management, of water management, of landscape management? Let me start with Dr. Kawawa first.
Yeah, definitely. The training itself did expose, at least in my view, how land use change can really trigger elements of impacts around this forest water relationship. So definitely it has affected my perception in as far as forest management, but also has exposed major gaps in terms of data requirements. We also need to do a lot of validation in terms of what is coming out of these models, and then what on the ground situation looks like. So we need to upscale it obviously to other areas, and I think Northwestern or the Upper Zambezi system provides a unique opportunity to maybe provide a level of ammunition to our stakeholders, or at least government, in terms of protection of that particular system in that sense. So very important. And what is also very unique about that area is that it's one of the few areas within the Zambezi Basin that is not regulated. There's no dam of some sort in that system. So we need to protect that because it's got vital ecosystem benefits that we're drawing out of it.
Thank you. And maybe to add to that, one of the key things that we learned during the workshops was from the water colleagues. We were saying, okay, well, we often see forest as just another land cover, but now there's just so much that is going on and so much that depends on this forest management for the ecosystem services. But let me now move to Muyunda. Muyunda, did it change your view on forest management? You come from the forestry department. Did this change how you think? I mean, I think you alluded a little bit to this in the previous answer, but please tell us more.
Thank you very much. Of course, it did. It did. I think looking at the relationship between forest and water, I think what in terms of change, I saw the importance of increasing greater collaboration among agencies, water and all these others, the national heritage, all these others that are involved in the conservation or management of some sort. Because at the end of the day, we need to be able to speak the same language. Sometimes you would find that maybe if it is only forest department doing something, you find that we may embark on the complete afforestation program in a certain area. Meanwhile, water also, they want more water to go in the ground. So meaning that those will be conflicting. So there's need for us not to work in silos, but to really collaborate and ensure that we are we share notes on what it is that we want to do within the landscape. I think that would also help. So that was the change that I saw that was really very, very, very important.
Thank you, Muyinda. Maybe let me pass it on to Cassandra. Did it change your views? Did the assessment, everything, did it change your views?
Yes, of course. The trainings that they significantly widened my understanding of how changes in forest cover, especially from the upstream areas, impact water availability going to the downstream. Of course, from the presentations, we also heard the avoidance of runoff, and how it negatively somehow impacts the water availability. And this also has another effect on the local livelihoods that are dependent on those forests. It also affects the carbon storage, and it has reinforced the importance of participatory forest management and the need to protect riparian zones. Yeah, so in the area of study, we also did assessments in community forest management groups that were in those areas. And it was good to note that from the training, the results and what was standing out for me is that the community forest management areas, like those that were assessed, can serve as vital ecological buffers that support water regulation, especially when managed through sustainable practices like the assisted natural regeneration. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And let me finish with Stephen. Stephen, did it change your views? Did the assessment, the workshops, did this work change your views?
Yes, of course. The assessment and training significantly enhanced my understanding of how forest directly influences water availability as well as the supporting climate adaptation. I now fully appreciate the importance of conserving forests located near or adjacent to water bodies, because they play a vital role in maintaining downstream water quality as well as the quantity. This insight will be instrumental in revising our CFMG forest management plans, particularly in areas where forest water and climate linkages were previously overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And we have a couple of minutes left. So let me ask you about how you can use this. I mean, Stephen, you alluded to how this can be included in the, or to use to update the CFMG forest management plans. But how else can we use this in your work, whether that's in the forestry department, at FAO, from the academia perspective? Stephen, you work with the communities, you also have the project. So how can we use these results? Maybe over to you, Kawawa.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sarah. How can we use these forest products? In my opinion, we've got a lot of work to do at basin level. Even, for example, in the lower, catchments of the Zambezi, in the Delta region. We've got this very important, for lack of a better word, lack of understanding in terms of the ecosystem services, especially, you know, from a perspective of environmental flows. So these flows required to ensure that, you know, your environment, for example, is performing as it should. Now, issues to do with the forests are normally forgotten in that, you know, assessment. And for me, in such kind of e-flow assessments, we are learning from what we've seen, at least in the in this assessment, that they need to be considered, and the right type of methodology perhaps needs to be incorporated, where we recognize the vital role of forests. So I think it's important to improve methodologies around things like e-flows, but also from a perspective of hydrological modeling, the role that forests you know, plays. I know in the question and answer, there's a question around, did we consider, for example, the deep-rooted you know, trees, or it was mostly shallow-rooted? This is something that such an assessment is maybe calling for us to dig a little bit deeper and get this broader understanding in that particular sense. So there's space in understanding how hydrological systems better in that sense, because remember, the evaporation aspect is the largest flux that we have, and that is mainly coming from the trees. On another, you know, perspective is also from the policy perspective. We need to bring this to the policy space and see how we can incorporate this in the way in which we are designing forest management actions that we have. Currently, we've got blanket approaches, okay, where people just say, okay, look, don't cut trees, or this is a you know, a designated you know, field for commercial activities, but very little assessments are going in that particular sense. Finally, through ZAMCOM, the Zambezi River Coast Commission, there is the Zambezi Strategic Plan of 2018 that was developed. And the upper regions of the Zambezi were identified as a hotspot area for potential deforestation. And I think such kind of assessments can find also space in informing what our strategic plan for the Zambezi looks like in that perspective. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let me move over to Cassandra. How can we use this? How can we use this assessment? You kind of alluded to this as well. So
yes, so the tools can guide the forest management groups that is the community forest management groups in planning, yeah, which I already alluded to, and also implementing sustainable forest management practices to maximize both ecological and livelihood benefits. Yeah, for example, it would be very critical to also use such information concerning the forest water climate nexus into management plans, which can help communities secure ecosystem service payments and carbon finance opportunities. And then maybe on the part of the forestry officers, I think it can also be a good opportunity for them to use these tools to prioritize the capacity building needs for the communities that they are working with. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm passing it over to Muyunda. How are you going to use these tools?
Wow. Thank you very much. And it's like when you speak last, now you need to, if your point was taken, then you need to find how do you put across that point? Yeah, of course, the first thing is to make most of the technical staff to understand the tool, share information so that they understand these tools and they are able to appreciate. Hello, can you get me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so that to ensure that most of these technical staff understand the tools and they're able to appreciate the tool. and they also use it in their planning, in terms of planning and meeting their management objectives, because it's a very, very important tool. It will help us actually a lot in terms of implementation on the ground, just to ensure that we achieve goals that we have set up, the objectives, and then, of course, while it's doing that, knowing that you cannot have everything at the same time. You cannot have,
Indeed.
everything. You do this, but you're able to prioritize what you need at a specific point in time, and then you be able to use the tools like that. Otherwise, the tools are very good and effective. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stephen, would you like to add anything to this part?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. The concepts and the tools acquired during the training and the results sharing engagement can be applied to enhance and also sustain ecosystem services across the landscape. By integrating improved forest management practices such as the agroforestry, selective thinning, and also assisted natural regeneration, we can promote both ecological integrity and the community well-being. So these practices, I feel these practices can contribute significantly to key economic services, including increased timber production, improved soil fertility, biodiversity conservation, as well as the carbon sequestration. In turn, these enhanced ecosystem services from the enhanced ecosystem services from the improved forest management practices can generate tangible economic benefits across at that community level. For example, communities can access financial incentives through mechanisms such as carbon credit schemes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Indeed. And this is a perfect segue into our next section. But first, thank you to all the panelists for sharing your insights. And we wish we could have brought everyone that participated in the webinar, but that's not possible. We are short on time. So on the screen, you will see some of the insights that we had from the group work during the result sharing workshops, also from some participants of the training. So a lot of the things that you have brought up here today also came up during the workshop. So thank you for sharing your insights, your lessons, and how you will use these tools in the future. I'd like to take Dr. Kawawa's insights, saying that we have a lot of work to do, and we do. We have a lot of work to do. That's perhaps one of the main lessons. So let me go now to the next slide, please. Okay. So in terms of conclusions, let me summarize 2.5 years of work in 3 takeaway messages. So first of all, sustainable forest management by community forest management groups is critical for climate resilience and multiple benefits from the headwaters of the Zambezi. We saw that there are scenarios where there can be win-win situations, right? We saw that, for example, there was a scenario with low-intensity thinning, and this could have water and carbon benefits, but also enable communities to boost their incomes from timber. Empowering stakeholders and data-driven approaches enable effective management. We saw that building capacity across all levels, from local communities to district and national level authorities, is essential for management or sustainable management of the headwater forest in the Zambezi. Data and tools, as we saw, can support decision-making by communities and governments, such as, for example, the forest or water authorities, but also we need to include this into processes such as forest management plans, watershed management plans, evaluation of restoration initiatives. Dr. Maria alluded to this in her presentation. How are we restoring and where? Where are those restoration initiatives happening? Are we putting the right tree in the right place? Carbon projects. How are the carbon projects working? Do we have opportunities for PES, for payment for ecosystem services schemes? And last but not least, integrated scalable strategies foster long-term landscape resilience. So the methodologies replicability, incorporating forest inventories, local knowledge, research, allows for scaling up across regions and also highlights the importance of local knowledge from communities, but also of local educational institutions like local academia, like UNSA, like Hopper Valley University, and so on. And the importance of strengthening this local institutions. We can link sustainable forest management processes with other processes, as Dr. Kao was mentioning, related to integrated watershed management and other initiatives, for example, in terms of climate adaptation, to achieve holistic landscape management. At the end of the day, we can do that by optimizing ecosystem services, involving all stakeholders, balancing priorities, and doing that, we can achieve that holistic, holistic landscape management. Ultimately, this would lead to more resilient forests, watersheds, and communities in the face of climate change. So what do we do next? Next slide, please. So next, we have an online article that will be shared with you when we share the recording of this webinar. And you will receive that via email. We are also, as was also mentioned, we're also using forest inventory data, other part of FAO work, combining it with the model in Meninga to hopefully arrive at a district forest management plan. So we're working on that. We are also working on a summary report with all the results that you saw here today, because the graphs alone are not enough. We need to put that into the context, given the context that is also coming up. And we're writing 2 scientific papers because I don't think we have highlighted that today, but this is the first time that the model is used in this context. It is the first time that we're collecting all this information for this area of the Zambezi. This is huge, that we started with an area that had very little information, and we have an incredible amount of knowledge now compared to 2.5 years ago. And that knowledge is being translated into management opportunities and discussions, bringing everyone to the table. So this is quite unique what we're doing. And of course, we couldn't have done it alone. This is a huge process with a lot of partners. So we also have a DSS training. There is a part 2 of the MedFaid training that we did in last year. So there is a part 2 coming up with the participants, some of the participants of the workshops. And we hope to replicate and scale this up beyond Zambia. So there are a lot of lessons that other countries can also learn from this. So next. Oh, well, actually, to close the webinar, we are going to invite my colleague, Maria Ruiz Villar, to close the webinar. We had a representative from the FCDO, the UK government, to close the webinar, but unfortunately he couldn't join. So Maria is going to help us delivering those notes for them. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm more than grateful for this opportunity to close the event. It has been really an insightful afternoon, and I think we have all enjoyed all the results of this study. I would like to take 2 minutes of your time just to reflect on the findings. I think it has we knew about this interaction between forest climate, but now we have like a concrete local example to explore and to demonstrate that. I particularly enjoy the applied data. I think it's not only about research, it's not only about data. It's about the possibility to apply it. And with this study, we have the data now to manage better our forest, to manage water, to manage soils. I mean, don't underestimate the thing that it's not only about data production, it's about taking action. And the fact that this data has been produced in a collaborative effort, it increases even the potential for action. And this is my second insight, which I think it was really great and it was really highlighted today. We brought together sectors and actors that normally do not work together that often. And it's not because they don't share objectives. On the contrary, they really share a lot of objectives. They simply don't have the opportunity. They are busy with their own work, and putting people together really adds the potential to improve the data, improve the knowledge, and take better action. We call it forest, water, climate nexus, but we could easily even put forest, water, climate, and soils, and socioeconomic aspects, and communities, and livelihoods. I think bringing all these elements together in a certain territory or in a certain watershed, in this case, brings a lot of value. And on this, I may close by hoping that this study brings momentum, and then we can replicate and scale all these efforts, continuing our partnership and our shared commitments. And on this, maybe I need to thank particularly the UK government through the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, who has supported this study in the UN RED program. And we hope that we will continue collaborating with all of you. Really, thank you. Well done.
Thank you, Maria. And before we close, I also would like to thank the team behind this. As you can see, it's not one or two people, it's a huge team behind this work, and it's ongoing. So thank you to everyone, to my colleague Dicton, who's helping behind the scenes, to my colleague Maria Kukarba, who's also helping behind the scenes to make this webinar possible. So thank you, everyone. And with this, we close today's webinar, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.